Everyone wants more money, but most of us weren't taught how to create an abundant life. That's where the More Money Show comes in. If you're ready to have more money, create more freedom, and experience more fun, turn the volume up. It's time to learn how to create the prosperity and life you have been dreaming of. Here's your host, Cassie Parks.
Hello and welcome to the More Money Show. Today I am here with Mel Parrish. I am so excited. We are going to talk about a lot of fun things, including like coming out woo, and how that can change your life. I want to touch on that, but also, of course, about manifesting money. So welcome, Mel. How are you?
Yay. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here today.
Good. I'm so glad to have you. So you can totally tell us what you do too, but I'm started to ask this question because I think it's so much more fun and powerful. Like, what makes you amazing? Tell us about Mel and like what makes you amazing.
It's really funny because I kind of did an exercise recently to tap into like your superpower, your unique amazingness. And I think I'm a risk taker.
Ooh, yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So I think that's what makes me amazing.
I love it. So cool. And that totally makes sense. Cause tell us what you do in the world, who you are and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So I am a plus size model and I blog mostly about body positivity, but as Cassie knows, I recently came out as woo. So all that's about to change. Get ready, people.
Right?
Here I come, coming in hot. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love it. So exciting.
Yeah.
Well, let's just start there. We're going to get into money. Mel has some great money manifesting stories. I'm so excited to share with you guys. But tell us about that process, because I think this is one of the things people face a lot. That come into my world. It's like, I get this question, is the Facebook group private? Like nobody can see my post, right? And they're like, and I'll get it. Like, you said it was private, but posts are showing up in my feed. I'm like, that's because you're in the group, but it's very I don't want anyone else to know. Not everybody's like that, but I think you had you didn't have that question, but that was sort of where you were living in your life, which is the place a lot of people do, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I come from a really conservative background, despite the fact that I'm now in fashion and in a very creative and out there world. I haven't always inhabited that world. And my social network, especially on Facebook, is not necessarily of that ilk. So that was definitely a big step for me to share with the larger world in a non-private space that I'm I'm spiritual. Here it is. Deal with it. And it actually was so perfect because it coincided with Gay Pride Month.
Oh.
And so I was like, I'm coming out. I'm doing it. But I am not actually gay. But I love the gay community. And I just thought that was so beautiful that I could kind of ride that wave of energy that was going through the world at that time.
Yes. Oh, I love it. Yeah. And so what kind of brought you to that decision where you were because I remember getting a message or an email from you and you're like, I'm going to do it. I did it.
I'm going to do it. I did it. I'm doing it. Yeah. No, it totally came about through our correspondence because, I'd been through, I'm a repeat, would you say I'm a manifest 10K junkie? Because I think I kind of am.
Yeah.
I keep going through, I love having the process. It's I was in the military and I think it's that part of my brain that just sees a structure and latches on.
Yes.
So I think I'm on my third or fourth time going through it now.
I love it.
Yeah. And one of what I had perceived to be a big manifesting win from the first time I did the course kind of had a long tail to it because it was a booking that came in, a piece of work that was awesome. But then for some reason, it was totally bizarre. The pay just took forever to come through. And I was kind of working on that one day, chewing on that manifesting prompt. And I reached out to you and Jenny over email and I was like, what is going on here? And then you encouraged me to get in the Facebook group, which I haven't done yet. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm coming out. It's time. So.
I forgot that was why, but yeah. Mm-hmm. So it was you were doing the course, just not sort of being in that space because somebody might see you as woo.
Oh, how terrible that would be, right?
Right.
No, it was really funny because when the podcast over on Manifest It Now with Ginny came out and I posted on it in my Instagram, and Jenny commented, she was like, I love that you call that like woo woo, because that's just like a totally normal day in my world. And I'm like, goals, those are my goals. Like when I don't feel like, excited or weird about like posting about law of attraction, that's what I'm working on.
Yeah.
So.
I love that. It's so cool.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be inspiring to a lot of people who listen to this because I think there is like a lot of people are like, ooh, what are people going to think about if this is what I do, and they know, and and it's all fine, right?
It's all fine. Well, it's really funny because I had always used the term woo woo in like a very positive, like loving, affectionate way, like, oh, me and my woos,
Yeah.
But I looked it up on Urban Dictionary because when I used that term in a post, people were asking me, what does that mean? And I was like, well, what does that mean? Like, I kind of know just through osmosis, but let me look it up. And it was like gullible and like conspiracy theory and like all these weird connotations that I never associate that with the term. But that is, I think, when people are in that space, and when I was in that space of like, I don't want people to know I'm doing law of attraction, we're afraid that the world's going to perceive us as somehow less than, stupid, gullible, because we believe in our own ability to co-create our life.
Yeah. Which I know, crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it happens. And I think everybody goes through that phase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and there's so many forces at play in the world that like want to keep you in a state of sort of like active desperation when it comes to how you're approaching your life. Because how else are we going to sell you things if you think you have it all together? So it, I think in a very unconscious way, we all participate in that to some extent. And that's why people use the term awakening to describe, their discovery of these different spiritual concepts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Cool. So tell us about your experience with manifesting prior to Manifest 10K.
Sure. I actually formally discovered the law of attraction only a couple months before I dove into your content. I think I did, I was on a casting and another model there was like, oh, have you done your visualization? Have you scripted about this? And I was like, no, tell me more about that. And she's like, oh yeah, law of attraction, look it up. So I did. And then came into contact with your book a few months later. And I feel like before that, I probably, without realizing I was doing it, had been manifesting things like a career change from naval consultant to model at 28. That probably had something going on, a little bit of manifesting sprinkled in there. But so I don't think I had ever like really consciously been doing that until I discovered Miss Cassie Parks.
I love it. That's so cool. Awesome. And I love this. I was reading, I always ask questions before we get started. Yeah. And it was like, I think that did have manifesting in it, but like so many people, it hadn't translated necessarily to the cash, like some from your modeling, right? But I was reading and you're like, I think about 50% is like after, I met. And like, I think that a lot of times people get good at sort of that stuff. Like, of course I can be a bottle at 28, but then when it comes to the money, sometimes they get tripped up there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like, giving yourself permission to really want what you want, which is, I feel like a big part of what you teach, just kind of claim that what you want, say it out loud, write it down, inhabit that reality that you're working towards. And you talk about it as becoming a lot.
Yeah.
Becoming. Which that has been like probably the single biggest shift that I've seen.
Is the becoming?
Because I'm a how addict.
Yes.
I'm in recovery. I'm a how junkie. Yeah. And I love like that type A former military part of my brain loves like a PR plan, a strategy, loves to sit down and like write pitch emails till the cows come home. And that'll get you so far, but it's kind of like you're not seeing the forest through the trees. Where are you trying to actually get with that? And that's the becoming.
Yes. So say more about how you've tapped into that becoming.
For me, it's actually just meant like a lot of slowing down and a lot of letting go in terms of behaviorally.
Yes.
But I've used a lot of the tools that you teach to kind of get there, to support that, like scripting and journaling and visualizing. And I love, I think I told you this, day 24 I don't know why. Like I go back to that all the time because I just love that process of reinforcing your worth and everything. And that makes it so much easier to say, like, I'm not going to go sink into that place of desperation or that place of howling.
Right.
I'm going to stay up here in becoming for today.
Oh, I love that. Like howling is down here, becoming is up here. That's so, such a good visual for that because that's so true. And that's the key. And that's kind of what we tapped into when that check wasn't showing up, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that was crazy because the same day you emailed me, I did like a couple little things. I got on Facebook and I left some notes and did some scripting. And then I checked the mail that afternoon and the check was already there. Crazy.
Yay, right?
Yeah. I was like, no way.
Like it's here. Yeah. And so I just want to recap kind of the story because we touched on it and I've heard it and you've told it to me. So I think you so Mel got this great modeling job, right? Yeah. But the check took forever, like longer than normal standards, wasn't showing up. And so you were really in that space of like, what did I do wrong? Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like what, how did I create this? Yeah. Howling, right? Howling. Which I'm guessing you'd been there for a while before you emailed and said like, you know, what am I doing wrong? Right?
Yeah. All the time.
Yeah. And really it was like, and I love that you did what I said, right? Mm-hmm. And so you went in the group and you celebrated some other people, right?
Yes. And that's like still my favorite thing to do in there is just go play cheerleader.
Yes, right? Why is it your favorite thing? And how do you think it impacts reducing that howling and increasing that becoming?
Well, it's so like, it's really fun to step out of your own bullshit for a minute, if I can say that. And that in and of itself is great. But then it's also like you're activating that part of you that gathers evidence, that part of you that wants to become your future self when you celebrate what other people are achieving, especially other women, because we're so competitive and there's so much like negative comparison that happens. Mm-hmm. It's like the perfect antidote is just to celebrate.
Yes, I love it. So cool. So what have you always been like, I don't know, decent with money, good with money? Like what would you title before you found me?
I'm so glad you asked. I would title myself like a hot mess train wreck. I don't know. Like,
that was the title of your money story. I love it.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's really similar to like what most people, especially in their 20s, go through when you just sort of like spend mindlessly, rack up a little credit card debt. And then you wake up and you're like 28 and you're like, wait a second, I have like no net worth. I want to work on that. So it's so cool that real estate has been like a huge part of your journey with money.
Yeah.
I love real estate mostly because like once you put it into a house, you can't spend it.
Right. Yeah. That's such a great, right? It's there. It's sitting there. Yeah.
Impulse
so you
control.
know it, but it's sitting there. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So I've got, I mean, cleaning up my act involved like some of the left brain stuff of like actually learning about money and compound interest and all of that is really good to know. But most of it has been like addressing my spiritual needs in a better way. And that's, you know, exactly what your course does.
Yes. I love that. So what would you title your money story now?
Expansion always and always, baby.
Oh, I love it. Expansion always and always.
I've been watching a lot of $1 Million Listing lately, and that's one of the taglines from
I love it.
Appropriated for myself.
That's fabulous. And what a great way to get into that vibe, right?
Mm-hmm. I love that show.
Yeah, it's awesome. And your brain starts to change when you're like, there's another $1 Million Listing in a month. Like it's never not $1 Million Listing.
Of course.
So, right? Because that's the name of the show, right? Yeah. So you're like, oh, there's another person who has $1 million house and is probably selling it to get a more expensive house.
Right.
Yeah. There's another one.
You watch those agents and they're just so gutsy and they like, and it's interesting that they're all men. I find that really interesting. But there is a part of me that really needs to see that, like see them ask for what they want and get it over and over and over again. And I'm like, oh, me too. Sure. Let's do that.
Yeah, right. I can do that too.
Yeah.
I love that because I love being able to see someone else in action. Like, so if you need to like borrow their confidence or like, what would they do? Right. You can tap into that right away.
Yeah. And it's especially interesting because those guys get like shot down, they fail, and it like, they all think they're still like the hottest thing walking. You know, it doesn't affect them. They don't internalize any of it. And that's amazing to watch.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And I'm going to like go watch more of that show just for that reason.
I'm not being paid to endorse the show by Bravo. I swear. I do love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, it's great for that. And it's great when you can find things that are, because what I find, and I don't know where, like, I'd love to hear where you were on this scale, because I don't think we've talked about this, but so many people, it's like book, learn, right? But like when you can find things that you can see things in action and you can pull like, okay, I'm going to try that. Like, I'm going to try being that risky. I'm going to try it. Like, I can't believe you just asked for $500,000 over asking. Like, I'm going to try something similar. Yeah. I think it's a different way of learning the lessons than just like trying to read. Like, to me, that's a lot of the how. Like, that's how people get into a lot of the how is like, well, I can read another book so I can get better at this. But really, I think so much happens when we can do something like watch a show like $1 Million Listening and go, oh, okay, game on.
Yeah.
I'm going to start doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like, I forget who says this, but there's another influencer out there who talks about spiritual entertainment.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is when you're just sort of like consuming book after book after book without putting it into action. And maybe that's another reason I keep going back to the course, because there's the journaling prompts and like the teaching, but there's always like, now go out there and find money. Now go out there and high five the doorman, you know, like all that stuff.
Yes, absolutely. I love that you said that, because that's the way I wanted to create it. It's like give you the stories, like make you understand and believe and the reason behind it, but like now go do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's totally different than just sort of consuming it for spiritual entertainment.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And it changes how you show up when you have an assignment to do every day, right? Works on that becoming. How do you think that impacted your becoming by like having those assignments, those things to like actually step into?
It like created it. Because I didn't have the becoming before that, you know? So it really was like, that was the one big keystone in my shift to being able to do more of that becoming and less of the howling.
Oh, I love that. All right. So we're going to talk about that again, right? Like it was taking the steps that allowed you to become, because I love this because I get this question a lot. And so I'm going to refer to this story a lot now in the future, but because people are like, well, how do I become? And I'm like, it's not you do it. Like that's, you take steps, right? You do the, I don't like to call it action because that gets confused with other things, but you actually do things to become. You can't think it. You can't how the becoming. Like it's literally two different things.
Right. Yeah. Like, I don't know how I'm going to become the woman that like has her own driver and dines at 4-star restaurants every night, but I can take an Uber or I can go sit at that restaurant.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how you learn how that feels, right? Like if you never get even in an Uber, like you don't know what it feels like to be driven.
Right.
You know?
And it's interesting because like my experience with the becoming has actually been a discovery process of how much of my ideal life I already live. And I'm just like, I just wasn't seeing it, you know?
Yes. And that's like one of the best revelations that happens like to like my private clients. It happens to people in Manifest 10K. And I love it. They're like, oh, about 70, 80, sometimes 90, like is already here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you realize that, you sort of, did it help you stop sort of reaching?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you're operating from this total position of just like lack, scarcity, I don't have it, then it's all desperation and nothing repels success and progress like desperation.
Yes.
But then when you realize you're like, oh, I have the enchiladas, I'm just looking for the cilantro, you know, a dollop of sour cream, then it's
Oh my gosh, best like explanation ever, right?
it would be about food coming from me. But yeah.
But it's so like, because you're like, I just had the vision, right? Like, yeah, here's the enchilada. Like, all I need is the sauce.
On our Manifest 10K reality show, that would be my hero line. Would be, I already have the enchiladas.
I love
just
it.
looking for the sour cream.
Oh my gosh, I like, yes. That's so like, that's like somewhere, I don't know how it's happening, and not even, it's just like I already put out, like, there's a show about this stuff, right? Like,
that's right.
And that was just great evidence. And we already have like your tagline when you're on the show and somebody's following you around.
Enchilada mama. That's
enchilada. I just need the sauce. Now I just need the cilantro.
We'll sprinkle.
Yeah. So
where do we go from that?
I know, right? I'm not quite sure who just joined us, but it's awesome. So super fun. You gotta roll with it. You never know.
That's right.
Yeah. And so I love the enchilada thing. So that's so cool. I'm like totally on that. So how do you go in? So how does what you know now and the woo that you use and all of like going through Manifest 10K, how does that help you go into auditions? Do you go into auditions differently? Is it an audition for modeling? Audition, what do you call it?
Audition or casting or go-see. I mean, it's all the same thing. Well, for me, one of the shifts has been, because I live in Washington, D.C., and most of the go-sees and the castings are in New York. And I used to be that girl, like, didn't matter what the pay was, didn't matter if it was an outside shot. Like, I was in the car and I was going up there. And I think there's some value in that, and there is goodness in the showing up.
Yes.
At certain times. But I think what my soul needed and my personal development needed was, I was doing a lot of that from that place of lack, from that place of desperation. So the way that it's really shown up has been allowing myself to be selective. Like, not every opportunity requires that. Or I'm worthy of direct bookings, and I can say to my agent, like, no, I'm not going to hop in the car for that. But if you want to send them my package and tell them I can book directly, let's do that.
Oh my gosh. What a powerful place to be.
Yeah, it's feeling really good. And it's definitely making me like a happier, saner, more well cared for person. But yeah, it's a shift. It's a definite shift.
Yeah. I love that. And I'm super excited to see how that shift like keeps playing out and gets bigger and bigger, because that's huge. And that like goes with like entrepreneurs like that are like, oh my gosh, I have to like go to everything. I have to do all this stuff. And I'm like, no, just decide like, what is it that you really want? And is it worth your time? I love that you say like that you've now stepped into that place where you can say, yeah, I'm not driving for that. But if they want me, they can choose that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think immediately when you make a shift like that, there is space that is created, and that can feel uncomfortable, especially if you're type A. You're like, oh, I have like free time. What a loser. That's what hurts. But I look at my scripting and I'm like, one of the things that I'm scripting is free time. Right?
Right.
I keep saying I want ease and spaciousness, and I guess that's what that looks like,
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then I think when you have that space, you create space then for new stuff to emerge or better stuff. So it's all goodness.
It is all goodness. And I love that you brought that up, because so many times manifestors are like, this is what I want. And they either don't see it when it shows up, or they're like, they don't know what to do with it because they didn't decide like, oh, what do I do with free time? Which is one of those things. And that is a key, I think. How did you learn to fill that time?
Well, in some ways I haven't. Like, I still just kind of allow that, because it's amazing how there's more room for me to like discover new content, let new ideas sort of burble up to the surface.
Yes.
And just do the things I'm already doing way better. And then I'll look back on anything from like a blog post to an email or just like things that I was doing a few months ago. And I'm like, oh my God, like, do you ever do that? You pull up an old email thread and you're like, there's so many typos in there. Or like I sound like a raving lunatic because I was in such a hurry to write it.
Yes.
So yeah, the way it's really looked for me so far has just been like doing what I'm doing better and allowing myself to do a little less.
Yes. No, that's awesome. Like that's so good.
It feels terrible on the one hand, but it's kind of like a detox process. Like I'm reteaching myself not to interpret free time as, I don't know, like the Western go culture tells you that's bad.
Right.
But yeah.
Absolutely. And it is a process, but it is exactly what you said. Like it's that space for those ideas to bubble up. Like I say that all the time, you know, the workshop that I do with people would not exist had I not learned to allow more space. And that obviously, if anyone's heard the story, like that came out of doing the Manifest 10K process when I changed it to be focused on 10K. But you know, like that idea couldn't bubble up. There wasn't space for it the way I was living my life in that moment. Yeah.
Well, and you talk about, like, I think you had like a morning a week where you just like wouldn't work. You would just enjoy life.
Yes.
And I loved, that was like one of the first introductions I had to the idea of like consciously creating free space. I'm like, oh, I can just not do anything. Like take a bath, take a nap, go to yoga or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And so that really was helpful hearing your experience with that. And then, like, I loved the thing in the course about like, you know, maybe your, vibing up activity includes like watching an episode of Friends.
Yeah. It's like my favorite. And what I love about that is that I love the evolution of that because I share that story in there and it's still like true, like, but it's often it'll be like 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, let me take a break. And like, it fills me up so much faster. Like it's like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm free and I could go do whatever I want. And I'm going to choose to like, maybe go back to work or I'm going to choose to go outside, you know, like,
yeah. I love it though. And just, but like that consciously creating free time, recreation, ease was like revolutionary to me.
Yeah.
So it's been really great. Yeah.
I love it. I love that you share that because I think it's revolutionary to so many people and it's like manifesting foundation, right? Like you can't add more stuff into your life if it's already full.
Yeah. Well, and like we've all grown up hearing like stop and smell the roses, but it really is true. Like if you don't appreciate what you have that's already in your world, like we talked about, everybody already has like maybe 70% of what they want.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's just not letting yourself appreciate it.
It's like not letting yourself see that the enchilada is already on the plate.
Enchilada.
Grateful.
Yeah. Enjoy.
Forever gonna
Saucy.
be sauce, right? You're just looking for the sauce. Like
that's right.
So much easier. I mean, that has so many practical applications, right? Like,
it really does.
It really does. Because like even going to the store, right? You're not going to be going all over if you just need like the sauce. You're in and out, right? Things happen quickly and easily. I mean, yeah. Super excited to see how this takes off in 5 years. And we're going to be like still talking about this enchilada.
Enchilada mama. I'm going to change my IG handle. Watch out.
I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. What's your favorite thing about the course? Or, I mean, was the space the biggest aha or was there something else that really just opened your eyes and changed?
So many ahas, like constantly. I think my favorite thing about it is just having a structure and a framework to fall back on. But then also like the way that has allowed me to stop being so reliant on structures and frameworks.
Yeah.
Sounds really contradictory, but it's true.
But I get it. I think, let me see if I can interpret it for people to listen. It's like knowing that there's a step-by-step process for manifesting and welcoming more money and becoming the person that you want to become more of makes it easier to let go of all those other structures you think you have to use to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, like those artificial little guardrails you kind of put on yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
No more bumper bowling for me.
Right. Yay!
The lane is open.
Any lane you want.
Right.
That's awesome. What advice would you give somebody who's like either starting Manifest 10K or hears this and is like, I don't know if I can manifest $10,000 in my life?
For specifically that, I think it's, and you say it a lot in there, is just like be open to all the crazy ways that can happen. Mm-hmm. And like let go of what your preconceived notions are about how that how that needs to show up, the howing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love it. Very cool. All right. So tell everybody where they can connect with your amazing self.
Oh, thank you. Well, you can find me on Instagram way too often at Mel Parrish Plus. True story. I'm on there all the time. It's really
spell it for everybody. That's awesome. So you actually are making me like want to I don't spend a lot of time on Instagram. The fact that you're there a lot makes me want to spend more time there.
Oh yeah. Join the party. It's great, especially now that Stories is on there and you can like do all your snapping and IGing in one platform. I just can't stay away. But
awesome.
Yeah. It is MELPARRISH Mel Parrish Plus.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. And your blog?
Oh yeah. melparrish.com also has some good stuff. So check her out.
Yes. And look for her in amazing like magazine spreads and places you find fabulous models. Look for
Or the Manifest 10K Facebook group.
Yes. And now when you're in the group and Mel is like cheering you on, you'll know like that's coming from somebody who's been there, done that, and is still growing and becoming.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I love it.
Oh, likewise, lady.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what else is coming up in your life and just how everything grows.
Oh, likewise. I can't wait.
Awesome. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Thanks for joining us on The More Money Show. To learn how to attract more money into your life, go to your favorite book retailer and order Cassie's book, Manifest $10,000.